Hello, everybody. Good morning. Apologize about the wait. Let me see this. There we go. Send that to the back. There we go. All right. Getting it all ready and good. How's everybody doing this morning? It's a little Sunday morning R&R. A little. My name is Matthew. Welcome to the stream. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Final Fantasy XIV online. So I guess that's part of the title too. Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG. In the same way that we took a look at Fabula Ultima a while back, I want to take a look at what was available and also try to run through a combat as well and take our time going through it, because this is actually a really accessible TTRPG in a good number of different ways, except for price, I guess. Well, even then price, but we'll get into that later. But my name is Matthew, the Newfable. Hello. I've done this before with Fabula Ultima. I always like to give my credentials kind of right around the top so that people know my experience and where I'm coming from. I started running RPGs maybe about 5 or 6 years ago now at this point. It was a while ago. Was it really? Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago. I started running RPGs. I started with Fantasy Age, because that seemed like a pretty easy, straightforward, no-nonsense one. I was like, well, just getting started. Yeah, okay. And I started pulling things from the Dungeon Master's Guide of 5th edition. So I got those core rulebooks and read them, and I was like, oh, this sounds great. Like so many other instances of players that play 5e. At some point, I went, oh, this is great. And I got the books, I read them. I had players who wanted to play through that game. Did a campaign of that. It kind of fell apart just because players, there was a lot of cancellations and players just weren't too happy about showing back up again. So Lord knows why that stopped. Kept running those, and then I started running games professionally for game stores, doing like not Dungeon Masters Guild, Adventurers Guild for D&D 5e, Pathfinder Society for Pathfinder 2nd edition, while also doing it a little bit professionally myself, running a couple of in-person games for a few groups around town that I'm currently in, and slowly making my way into running games online for folks at startplaying.games. Mostly I've run, the system I have the most experience with is D&D 5e, for better or for worse. But I've started running Pathfinder and like how robust that system is. My favorite currently is probably Fabula Ultima. I'm currently running a game of that professionally for folks, and there's a lot of other games that I really like that I haven't gotten a chance to run yet. This is one of them. But I try to make it a habit of looking at and reading through other RPG systems just to kind of see how they work, how they tick, what makes them function. Just to kind of get an idea of what these systems are generally kind of like and how game design is working out. Those are my, I was about to say transgressions. Those are my qualifications. Oh boy, let me take this scissor there. Oh, it's nice. I overfilled my coffee today. It's those weird moments of panic too, where you're walking around with this full glass of hot liquid, and you're just watching that and kind of minding your step everywhere you go, and then a flash of panic goes through your brain as you go, shit, I've got a cat. Where is she? The cat's underneath the table like, I don't know, where could I be? Okay. Enough dilly-dallying around. It also took me some more dilly-dallying. It took me a while to try to figure out how to run a test battle in this. Not because the game itself is difficult, but because I needed to find scans of everything, which I did find on Reddit. If you search around for the Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG, at the subreddit there, someone a couple of days ago was like, hey, I scanned everything. And so they scanned, they punched out tokens and scanned tokens. They punched out the markers and scanned the markers. They scanned the character sheets. They can't scan like tokens and stuff. So we're going to be running this on Owlbear Rodeo. I tried to set it up in Foundry. That was really difficult. Just to get stuff to like show up or appear or, you know, like have a way to interact with the sheet. I said, okay. I tried Tailspire, just to like a 3D space, roll some dice and all that, but I realized that would have been way too much heavy lifting to make it look good or decent to a viewer, even though Tailspire looks really, really good. And everything's also just high fantasy anyway, so I'd really be like, this character is the Black Mage because they're a black dragonborn and it looks like they're casting a spell. So it's really just like color. That one's the White Mage because they're wearing all white clothes and they got a staff. Like it would have been hard to figure out what was actually going on. I also tried Roll, which is a website where you can run games and all that. They have like a custom sheet maker, which is really great and intuitive, super fast, like drag and drop kind of stuff. But you can't run like a test game in it. As a game master, you can like make a sheet and then assign it to a player, and then players can have and interact with those sheets and all that, and that's great and cool, but there's no way for you to be like, as a game master, I'm just going to control 5 sheets and like run a test game. There's no way to do that. But Roll, I completely forgot about Owlbear Rodeo because Roll runs on Owlbear Rodeo. They have a partnership with them to do like maps and tokens and stuff. So I just went over to Owlbear Rodeo, threw in the scanned map, threw in the scanned tokens, just did all that stuff. It works great. We'll figure out if we can do like HP and MP and all that stuff as we go into it. But let's get into it. Feel free as well, if anybody out there is watching, or even in YouTube, if you're watching the VOD, feel free to pipe up and ask some questions and stuff. We're going to kind of give a read-through of this, not really a read-through through the Game Master's Guide, but mainly through like the rules of the game and how it's played, and then run through a fight, and then I'll give you all my thoughts on the system as well, especially once we have like a test fight coming out. And this is a very encounter-heavy game. It's very, very encounter-heavy. And what we're looking at today, I have the starter set right here next to me. I got all the dice. All the jingly janglings of the dice. Which are really neat. It's just a D20, D6 system. And all it comes with is in, let me see here, 4 separate colors. They come in 4 separate colors. Yeah, that's really just for every player. There's a blue one for the tank, a green one for the healer, a red one for 1 DPS, and then a white set for another DPS. Or maybe that's just the Game Master? Who the hell knows? Why is it like this, actually? I'm just realizing that all the colors... It's wild. But it's just got D20s and D6s in it. And that's all the system runs on, is D20s and D6s. And we'll see what it does as we keep going. Yeah, our introduction, we can skip the introduction here. There's a lot of like bold-reded text for ability names and things like that. This is the free one. You can download this online. If you just search or Google for the Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG. Square Enix has a page for it, and you can download these free books. So what we're looking at is free and readily available for everybody. If you're wondering what you get in the actual one, it's really kind of cute. The player's book is just kind of like a big glossy book. It's not, you know, like with one staple in it. It's very, very simply made. But you get the introduction of like Final Fantasy XIV. Starts like Heidelin, vibrant planet blessed by the light of the crystal. 5 years have come and gone, the light of life still shines upon Eorzea. That whole chestnut. And then the first, like, what is this? Like 10 or so pages features like a walkthrough of the game itself from players playing the game with like a cute little comic at the bottom. And then more or less you kind of get into the nitty-gritty of like how the game is played and some examples, and I think that's where this picks up. So it skips the really cute introduction and just says like, here you go, table of contents. Here's what we get. Because there's just encounters, and yeah, there's 20 pages to this document. Not a whole lot, but you're getting everything you need, as you would have if you had bought the starter set. So there's the Game Master. They're the person that is rules referee, set designer, and challenge maker. They're the one with all the monsters, the creatures, creepy crawlies. There's players, there's scenarios, collections of story beats and encounters. That's what they're called here. There's adventurers, which are the player characters, and NPCs, which are non-player characters. Monsters, which are like hostile creatures that you're going to be fighting. Characters, those are all beings, everybody. Allies are people that are on one side or another. Enemies are those that are opposed. So obviously, like, the monsters are allies to each other and enemies of the PCs. PCs are allies to each other, enemies of the monsters. And then dice. So playing the game, generally, we know what this is. Game Master will describe what's going on. Players say they want to take an action. Game Master describes what that action does to the world or what have you. If it requires a check, they ask for one. And if they succeed or not, failure or not, what have you. I do like this part here. This is the golden rule, which is the people at your gaming table are friends with whom you're collaborating. Whoa. You're collaborating to create a story. I do like that. That's very, very true. And like they always say, like following the golden rule, it's just, you're working together to create a fun experience for everybody at the table. So make sure that you're all having a fun time. Game Masters and players both. So the nitty-gritty, right off the bat, making checks. You determine the type of check required, you roll a d20, and apply relevant modifiers, and then you determine the success or failure of the action. So this is a d20 system. Very much like D&D is a d20 system. To be clear, this is not a D&D clone. A d20 system has existed long before D&D 5th edition that we know today. Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition was a d20 system. D&D 3rd and 3.5 edition was a d20 system. Pathfinder 1st edition, like iterating off of that, was a d20 system. It's a popular system. And the reason why is because you just focus on rolling one die to make any check that you need to make. And it's wildly chaotic, which partly can be fun. You're creating a bell graph, of probability when you roll this. So instead of just rolling and hoping for a number, most games that are running a d20 system will have some kind of modifier for whatever you're trying to do, even if it's like a +1 or a +2. Just to modify the likelihood of you getting certain numbers or not, and playing with percentages. But d20 games are usually pretty wild and chaotic, because you could do something pretty simple and roll a 1. Or, try to do something pretty simple and roll a big old number. And wildly succeed, and try to do something impossible and just get away with it. And that's why they're popular. That sort of wild, chaotic energy a lot of people really enjoy. So d20 systems can be really good. For that reason. I have my feelings on d20 systems. I personally think they're really fun as beer and pretzel systems. Systems where you just kind of abandon a lot of we really need to get this done. It's just I'll make the check. And here we have the challenge rating reference table. And this is just the number to meet or beat. That is how Final Fantasy XIV is going to work. So easy is a 5, average is a 10, hard is a 15. hard is a 15, very hard is a 20. So you're probably working with a baseline of 10, and depending upon how hard or easy the check is supposed to be, just increasing it by 1 or 2 steps, making it 15 or 5, maybe getting to 20 if it's going to be a little harder than it should be, going all the way to 25 or even 30. And you roll the dice and apply the modifiers. You add or subtract any modifiers from traits, abilities, enhancements, or enfeeblements. And then you determine success or failure. There is no, as far as I can tell, critical success in this game. There might be. There's advantage dice. As I've looked through this multiple times, there's been very little mention of critical successes, yes. So I don't think they exist in this game. Normally, critical successes or critical failures are when you roll the highest or lowest value on a die. D20 systems are usually 20 is a critical success, 1 is a critical fail or a critical fumble. Usually, some systems will play with that. Roll under systems. God, like one from Free League that just came out. I forget when the hell it's called. Oh my god. I read it and I know and I like it, but that's a roll under system. Simbarum is another one. That's a roll under system in the same way. So you'll have, instead of trying to roll to meet or beat, you're rolling to meet or defeat. I suppose that's how you'd call it. So what not to make checks, it's, let's see, like a Hale adventurer will have little trouble rising from their bed, strapping on their arms and armor, and leaving their inn room. Same applies to actions where the character's efforts are guaranteed to fail. No matter how skilled they might be, an adventurer hurling a pebble into the mouth of a cave can't expect their throw to kill a powerful monster deep within. The best they could hope for would be to scare off a few cave bats. As a general rule, you only need to make checks if the outcome of the action is uncertain. Yes. And that is the outcome of the action, not information. Don't hide information behind checks. It could be a bad thing. Advantage dice. Some traits, abilities, enhancements, and situations will grant advantage dice. Advantage dice allow you to roll extra d20s. So, for example, if you have 2 advantage dice when making a check, you will roll a total of 3 d20s for that check. After rolling your d20s, choose one of the results to use for the check. Take care that you do not add the results together by mistake. So advantage works a little differently here than it does in 5th edition. There, if you get advantage, you're just rolling 2 and taking the higher number. Here, you can pile on advantages. Penalties work a little different. There, you're just going to roll a d20 and add or subtract all applicable modifiers because they are going to give you negative modifiers. So there is no such thing in the Final Fantasy XIV starter set as disadvantage. Good morning. This coffee? Oh, beautiful fiancé just woke up. We both had a long day yesterday. Oh my god. Both came home and just passed the fuck out. But yes, there's no disadvantage in the Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG. There's just advantage. So if you give advantage multiple times, you're getting a d20 every time you get advantage. If you get a penalty, you're just subtracting from the result, or you're taking the sum of any positive modifiers and any penalties, and what's left, positive or negative number, you're applying to the d20. Advantage dice and penalties, yeah, same thing. Roll your d20s, choose one of the results to use, and apply modifiers and penalties as you would for any other check. Yes. Opposition checks. This is not exclusive to Final Fantasy XIV. Hey, yeah, going to the board game. Mm-hmm. A little bit. It's trying to become your one-stop shop for everything. I know. And then I forgot all about it. You can tune in if you want to, because we're going to run a combat and see how this looks and how this plays in a bit. Hi, Kato. Hi, sweet. Okay. Opposition checks. This is... Sorry, I get distracted by cute little cats and beautiful women who live in my house. Opposition checks are not exclusive to Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG or 5th edition. It's generally just a game feature that says, look, some things you're going against the world, that's just like a static number, like trying to open a door that's closed or locked, trying to pick a lock. The lock cannot oppose you because it is inanimate. So it is just the difficulty of trying to do the thing you're trying to do given your circumstances. An opposition check would be if somebody is trying to hold the door behind, the door is unlocked, but they're trying to hold the door shut and you're trying to open it. That would be an opposition check. Opposition checks are usually you and a creature or an NPC, generally that the game master controls, are going to have a roll-off. They can also happen between characters as well. The most common and unfortunate example is a rogue in the party is trying to steal something from somebody, and the other player that does not obviously want their thing stolen has to make an opposition check to see whether or not they see the attempt or not. But that's all opposition checks are. You and another player at the table, or you and the game master, are rolling dice, checking stats, depending upon who has what, in order to determine success or failure. So there, you're not setting a difficulty level or a challenge rating, as this game uses. It's really just a roll-off and figuring out who has the bigger, better value. Adventures. This is where it starts to get a little different. We went through the general stuff, and it's kind of sharing some stuff here, get a little different. And we'll actually look at some of the character sheets that we have as well. Somebody let me know if you want to see like a specific kind. We'll give a general overview of each kind in a bit, and people can take, screenshots or what have you. But jobs. I've definitely got thoughts about this, but Final Fantasy XIV works on a job system. For those that don't know, if you play the MMORPG, you are not bound by a singular class. So like where you play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars or something like that, where you are bound by the confines of a class, here those classes are called jobs, and you can switch them freely. This is a trait amongst Final Fantasy games in general. It's been around since, I think, 3. It's been around since 3. I know, because I've just been going through those recently. So yeah, the idea where you can change a job, it'll change up your stats, it'll give you different powers and abilities, all sorts of stuff, and you can do it freely. Here, in the same way that the MMO does it, it's split between tank, healer, and DPS. Or, for those that don't know, which is why I don't think they should be called DPS here, damage per second. It's a metric that was popularized with World of Warcraft to say, hey, this is how much damage per second you're dealing. The higher that number is, and you're just face rolling on your keyboard dealing damage, that's how much damage per second you're able to dish out on an enemy. It does not make any sense here. It doesn't. So I don't know why they're called DPS, and I don't know why this made it past the editor. But tanks are going to try to get the enemy's attention so that they're the only ones getting hit. The healer is going to try to heal the tank so that they don't die, and also try to heal anybody else in case bad things happen. And the DPS, or the damage dealers of the party, are going to try to kill things dead so that they stop hurting you and end the encounter quicker, and they're usually really good at doing that. Traits that some characters can have. There's size. Most adventures are medium, which just is a 1x1 space on like a gridded map, which you'll see what that comes out to. But you can always have like 2x2 if it's large or huge or gargantuan or even tiny or teeny tiny. Abilities. These are... I'm looking at an example of a character sheet that I have on my desk with me, because I've got the paper ones, and we're going to show you the scan ones too. But abilities are powers, effectively, that a character can use. These are named powers. They are mimicking the ones from Final Fantasy XIV, the MMORPG. They're mimicking those. They have different rule sets, but it's usually, I use this, or like tanks use reprisal, or tanks put on a tank stance, or whatever the case might be, and it has rules associated. There's additional traits and abilities. Over the course of a scenario, they might learn more. Unless otherwise stated, these additional traits and abilities can only be used during the scenario in which they're obtained. If you feel that an exception should be made, and that doing so would make the story more enjoyable, don't hesitate to share your opinion with the Game Master and other players. If everyone agrees, you may carry over additional traits and abilities from previous scenarios, or add new traits or abilities to your game. that I do have some feelings on. That's actually the first time that I've read that paragraph, because I just went, yep, there. But I do have some feelings about that, and I do think that's coded into how I think this game is going to be played and sold once the core rulebook comes out. I think there's going to be a specific way the designers want this game to be played. We'll go over that later on. Attributes. This is what we're going to be adding to the roll of a d20. It's these, what is it, five different attributes. There's strength, which represents athleticism, physical fitness, and the raw power they can bring to bear. There's dexterity, which is coordination, agility, reflex, and balance. There's vitality, which is just physical health, endurance, their hardiness, what they can do to take a hit. Intelligence is their, sharpness of mind, ability to recall information, and reasoning skills. And mind is perceptiveness, instincts, and intuition. A lot of this is like D&D 5e, admittingly. We're missing a charisma stat. You'll probably see why as the game goes on and you kind of look at a character sheet. But again, this is looking to mimic the MMO. And there is no charisma stat in the MMO. You're the warrior of light. Everybody loves you. You go out and kill God and they go, well, boy, howdy, I guess you deserve a 10% discount. Then there's secondary attributes. These are defense and magic defense. These are the numbers that monsters have to roll on a d20 to determine if they hit you or not. Speed is how far you can move, generally in like an encounter map. Like if you've got a speed of 5, you can move 5 spaces, is the idea. Or 5 feet, or however you delineate it. Because this game does not do that. Vigilance, this is interesting, is a passive attribute that represents how aware your adventurer is of their surroundings at any given time. This attribute is typically not used to make checks. Rather, the Game Master will use an adventurer's vigilance to determine what they notice about their environment. Be sure to tell the Game Master your adventurer's vigilance when starting a new scenario. This is a little bit of a blending of Pathfinder and D&D. Both of those games say passive. There's active stats where you'll have pluses that you add to a d20. If it's passive, however, to determine just someone's passive perception, it's 10 plus whatever the relevant modifier is. So if somebody in D&D can make a perception check at a +3, their passive is a 13. So if there's a hidden door that requires a check with a level to meet or beat at a 13, they're automatically going to notice it. But if it's at a 15 or a 14, they'll need to roll to see if they notice it. That's how that generally works. Vigilance is taking on that role of passive perception, a passive stat. This just exists. It is there. There is no check for it. And at certain points in time, players will notice this. This is something the Game Master needs to know and keep track of, in case there's any secrets and what they want the players to notice. I do think it's pretty wild, though, that there is no check for this. There is no roll a die and see whether or not you make something. This could probably be home ruled, but it's kind of weird because it really hampers the player's ability to really interact with the environment. If a player's walking like a dungeon, go like, what do I see? It's like, well, whatever your vigilance tells you, you see. And that's kind of it. Max HP and max MP. This is a little interesting. Max HP is classic. You have a set number of HP. If it falls to 0, you're knocked out. And you're unable to continue participating in an encounter that you're in. Max MP is set at 5. A lot of your powers or abilities might use MP, and you only have 5 of them. And that is because you're going to constantly regenerate MP every round. So you don't have a whole lot of it, but you're constantly getting it back. This is kind of how the MMO does it as well, but you can very obviously tell a stat squish. In the video game, everybody has 10,000 MP, but all of your skills and powers and abilities are all in increments of about 100 or 50s. So you could have like a really powerful ability that costs 1,000 MP to use. Well, congrats, you can use that 10 times before you are out. If you've got a heal, or yeah, that's a pretty good one. If you have a heal that costs you 100 MP, I think you could use it what, 100 times before you're out? If you got one of 1,000, you can use it 10 times. Here, it's just 5. So they've squashed it all down and kind of given the same general idea. It's going to recover, but it's going to recover slowly. So a lot of this game, when you're utilizing MP, is going to be to figure out how much or how little at any point in time you're going to regain against what you're spending. Which is wild, but everybody has this. And then an adventure profile. And this is generally, well, let me see here. Yeah, on the character sheets, and you'll see these when we look at these. These are just like blank lines that are just like, fill in stuff. What race are they? What did they look like? Where were they born? How were they raised? Why did they decide to become an adventurer? What are their likes and dislikes? Do they have any friends or family? Again, I have big thoughts on this as well, but we'll get to that at the end. When we like go over notes and kind of like write out pros and cons and visualize all that stuff. There's also titles and supplementary profile fields. More information can be found in the standard rulebook. That's not out yet. Again, it's just the starter set. So there are no rules in this game about building or making a character. Not yet. That's all going to be in the core standard rulebook, which is, hey, pick a job, pick a race, pick all these things, build out your character stats, and we're off to the races. So I've got a lot of guesses about how this game is going to run when it's fully released. But right now, we've just kind of got what we got. Encounters. Meat and potatoes. The basics, these are going to take place on a map, and they have to take place on a map. You're going to see why. But these have to take place on a map. Crazy place. But they do. So they're going to take place on a map of a varying size of what have you. Then you start an encounter. There's surprise, whether or not there's any surprise things going on. There's positioning. Game Master will usually put the enemies in position, and then the Game Master will specify, like, this is where the starting players start out, put yourself wherever you want, and then turn order. This is different from classic stuff you'll normally find. Players determine the order in which their adventurers and allies take their turns. It's very much like Fabula Ultima. And then we get away from that. This is referred to as the turn order. The turn order for enemies is determined by the scenario or left to the discretion of the Game Master. Game Master may choose to share this information, but isn't required to do so. Once the turn order has been set, it cannot be changed for the duration of the encounter unless otherwise specified. And then you go into rounds. And this is, again, where it starts getting really different. The first is the adventurer step. Each adventurer and allied character participating in the encounter takes a turn following the turn order. If the encounter hasn't ended, you proceed to the enemy step. Then the enemies go. Each enemy participating in the encounter takes a turn. If the encounter hasn't ended, you end the round, and then you end the round, new round begins, and the order of play starts over at the adventurer step. And that's really delineated for a lot of the times in board games, certain things might happen at certain steps. Case in point here, all the adventurers, all the players will regain some mana at the start of the adventurer step. So at the start of a round of combat, they'll get some MP back. But you will notice that all the players go first, then all the enemies. So unlike Fabula Ultima, where it's 1 and 1, then 1, then 1, where each side is taking turns, or more classic examples of initiative systems like D&D or Pathfinder, where everybody will roll, and then it's from highest to lowest, and then that sticks and stays, with a few different ways to change it. This is just players first, monster second. Is it over? Nope, start a new round, players first, monster second. It's a little easier this way, and players definitely have a bigger advantage here. We'll see how this plays out in an actual combat. But pretty wild. And then a lot of this is just some like solid rules or stuff. Like it says here, always resolve effects that impact adventurers before resolving those that affect enemies. Oh shit. I had a shortcut to mute my mic, and that just totally shrinks everything here. But just some basic rules, but that's really rare cases. Surprise pretty much says if a hidden enemy launches an attack against the adventurers, they're caught by surprise, cannot act on their turn or use instant abilities during the first round of the encounter. Be aware that it's possible for some characters belonging to a faction to be taken to surprise while other characters aren't. So a surprise round of combat is just, you don't get to act or do anything on that first round. It's a free round for whoever caught you by surprise. A turn is going to be separated with a couple of things, and I like how this is done. There are, for a character, mainly like a player character, you're going to get a primary action, a secondary action, and then standard movement or focus. Primary actions are using a primary ability, using an item that's listed as a primary item, sprinting, which is doubling the character's speed for this turn, performing any other action specified by the scenario or the game master to be a primary action. So there might be like you need to interact with a gate to stop the flow of enemies coming in. There might be like every round another enemy rushes through this gate and joins the initiative. So you can spend a primary action or two primary actions to like close this gate and stop that from happening. But they're primary actions you need to spend. Or you can spend a primary action to perform a secondary action. And those are using a secondary ability, using an item that's listed as a secondary item, performing any other action specified by the scenario or the game master to be a secondary one. And then something else you can do. Oh, that was that. And then standard movement is your speed. So remember that speed is a stat that all characters have. It's usually how far you can move. You get that. So on your turn, for instance, like I'm looking at our warrior tank here. They have a speed of 5 squares. So they can do a primary action, secondary action, and then move 5 squares if they want to. Or they can spend their primary action to take an additional secondary action, then take a secondary action, then move. And movement, let me see here. Yeah, you may also choose to split up a character's movement and have them pause to perform different actions. Afterwards, they're free to continue their move as long as they have movement to use. So your movement is like a budget. You can move that many spaces on your turn regardless of anything else you're doing. Focusing is interesting because you get your standard movement or you can focus. And focusing means you forego all your movement to perform an additional secondary action. And that might be really good for black mages. We'll see. For you to just like stay still and say, I'm not going to move, you get 2 secondary actions and a primary action. And then free actions are like talking to one another, shouting strategies at other characters or so, maybe trying to intimidate somebody, like opening a door, picking up an item, or sounding a warning whistle, something simple and easy. This again is also part of a lot of RPG systems, TTRPG systems, where if something's not defined, but it's pretty quick for you to do, yeah, you can just do it. This is just an idea to let game masters and players know that you aren't entirely confined by the systems in play here, but the systems in play are generally how the game is made and designed. And then there's instant abilities. These are probably the most confusing and also the most fucking crazy. Characters can react to the ever-changing circumstances of an encounter by using instant abilities. Unlike other abilities, instant abilities may be used during any character's turn, provided their trigger conditions are met. However, a character cannot use instant abilities when they are surprised, nor can they use multiple ones on a given turn. On any one turn. That's not a round or a step. That's any turn. So they say, example, during an enemy's turn, a warrior uses Interject in response to an ability used by that enemy. They cannot then use Thrill of Battle, which is another instant ability, in response to the same ability, as it is still the same character's turn. They may, however, use Thrill of Battle in response to another ability on the next character's turn. If an instant ability is used during another character's turn, that character can continue their turn as soon as the instant ability is resolved. And then here's an example. So like Adventurer X can't use 2 abilities on enemy A's turn, but 2 different characters can use instant abilities on the same enemy's turn. And a single character can use an instant ability on, 2 different enemies' turns. I think this is really going to slow down combat. Instant abilities are not entirely big. They're not really, really huge. It's just, here's an effect that happens. Here's something that occurs. And you're looking for trigger conditions, really and truly. But they can slow down combat as players are piping up and going like, oh, I'm going to do a thing, oh, I'm going to do a thing. Especially if you got 4 of them, and every turn, every single player wants to use all of their instant abilities. That gets chaotic. And then there's movement effects. Some things can move your character around the board in a variety of ways. Either powers or abilities or what have you. Then we go into character size, and this is really just talking about squares. Because yes, small and medium creatures are just a single square on a grid. Large creatures are 2x2, huge is 3x3, colossal are 4x4. This is just to showcase how much space they're taking up on the map at any given time. That's generally what size is talking about. Abilities are usually going to have a type, which will tell you primary, secondary, or instant. That lets you know what kind of action is necessary to use them. Physical, magic, or unique, which will, I guess, have different keyword associations once the core rulebook comes out. And then other classifications, such as invoked, fire aspected, and so forth. And I think that'll have more information as the core rulebook comes out as well. And then the cost. If there's some kind of cost required, either an HP or MP or movement or what have you, and then a requirement. Some having a requirement before the ability can be used. The target, the range of the ability. So like 5 squares, the ability affects 1 or more targets within 5 squares of the user. A 3x3 area centered on the character. 3x3 area adjacent to the character. Or a 5x5 area within 10 squares of this character. And they give you some examples of all of those and what those could look like. But then the check is always a roll of a d20. If it's a physical, challenge rating for physical attack ability checks will always be defense. The challenge rating for a magic abilities check will always be magic defense, unless it's otherwise stated. Those are 2 separate values for those. So a creature can have really high defense and be really vulnerable to magic. And very likely to be hit. And I think we're getting yes. So here we go. So there's a base effect for abilities. The effect that is resolved when the ability is used. An ability's base effect is always fully resolved unless something interrupts or otherwise negates the use of the ability itself. Direct hit is an additional effect that is resolved when the character scores a direct hit with the ability. A direct hit is I forget where it says it. But a direct hit, effectively, is when you meet or beat somebody's defense or magic defense. And limitation indicates how many times the ability can be used in a given period of time. Ability checks. If the ability checks total equal or exceeds the CR, the ability scores a direct hit, and the effect described in its direct hit field is resolved alongside its base effects. Rolling for ability effects, sometimes you might just roll to do a thing, or to determine some kind of an effect beyond direct hit, and that will tell you what that is. There are criticals, but again, no critical failures, it looks like. But if you roll the little meteor icon, you get a critical success. Criticals double the number of dice rolled to determine the amount of damage dealt or HP healed. All the other numbers for the ability remain unchanged, so you just get double the dice. Ability checks for multiple targets. Make a single ability check and use the result to determine a direct hit on each target. Damage and healing for multiple targets, same thing. And then there's proc effects. Some abilities have additional proc effects that trigger if a d20, either the one rolled for the ability check or another rolled, specified in their base effect, lands on a specific number. Whether or not a proc effect is triggered is determined by the unmodified value of the dice roll. And then when it's triggered, do the thing that says what happens. Like, oh, if this triggers, gain some mana back or gain some HP back, whatever the case might be. There are also, in this game, and we'll go over this very briefly because this is taking a bit of time, but markers. There are markers in this game. Very much in the same way that the Final Fantasy MMO has markers or mechanics, that exists here. Generally speaking, they're going to work kind of the same way. Like, if a creature has, like, a line marker in front of it, it's signifying this is going to be damage dealt in this area. For the most part, is going to have like a marker type. It's going to have an origin. It's going to have a marker area. It's all of that is going to be detailed exactly what it is that marker does. If it's going to move with the target, if it's going to target an area on the map, if it's an AoE, if there's certain lines to it, what's going to trigger it. These are just big mechanics. So it's going to be easier to look at it like this. Sample abilities that generate markers. So there's an ability name. This is stationary. The origin says a random square containing an enemy. So it's targeting a empty square, not an enemy itself. Marker area is a stationary 5x5 area centered on the origin. The target is all enemies within the marker area. So if the caster decides to move in there, they're fine. If allies of the caster move in there, they're fine. And the marker trigger is the beginning of this character's next turn. And the effect, just deal 4d6 damage to all targets. There's no check to this. So if an enemy is inside that 5x5 area on the map at the start of that creature's next turn, they get dealt 4d6 damage. Or there's also mobile ones. And there's plenty of others, but this is another example. The origin is one enemy tank. So if you've got the moniker of a tank, it's on you. It's a mobile 3x3 area centered on the origin that moves with the origin. So as that enemy tank moves around the battlefield, this marker moves around the battlefield with them. The target is all enemies within the marker area. The trigger is the beginning of the character's next turn. The marker effect is deals 80 damage divided evenly amongst all targets. This is very much like a Final Fantasy XIV stack marker. You might get a stack marker on your character, and when that happens, all the characters in the party want to stack because it's going to deal a flat amount of damage but distributed amongst all of the different characters in the stat marker. It's a classic trigger, but there's lots of these. You can have cones, you can have lines, you can have big AoEs, you could probably have ringed AoEs, multiple ringed AoEs, all sorts of stuff. But that's generally what they're going to have. An origin, an area, a target, and a trigger, and then what that triggered effect is. So you could probably build and make your own. And then there's phases to encounters as well. A single encounter consists of one phase. That is generally phases. A phase of an encounter might be a bunch of different rounds. So if you want to have phases with like multiple enemies in them, you could say this whole encounter is going to have 3 phases. First phase is just like one enemy or 2. Then the next phase, when all those enemies are defeated, starts the next phase, and more enemies come in. You could also do this for bosses. You have a boss phase. Here's a boss. It's got this much HP. When it goes down to 0, it starts the next phase. It's got this much HP, and abilities have been changed or what have you. Then you could start like the 3rd phase, and it gets even more powerful or more crazy. That's just what phases are. They are a mechanic in this game that allows you to set stages to an encounter without having to micromanage it within creatures or monsters themselves. You just say, here's another phase. You don't have to re-roll for initiative. You don't have to do any of that. It's still part of the same encounter. You just say, here's phase number 2. Or phase number 3. That's generally what those are. HP is HP. In this game, if you run out to 0, you're knocked out. You cannot take part in the encounter anymore at that point unless there is a specific rule or item, something like revive, or it's a Final Fantasy, so like a Phoenix Down, something along those lines will let you like bring a character back up. And those will have certain rules. It might be like revive a character that's been knocked out to half of their maximum value or to their full health value, or whatever the case might be. Barriers, however, are a different kind of healing that this game can have. I don't think it's present in the starter set yet. It might be at different levels, because you do have a white mage here. Certain abilities can furnish characters with barriers that provide additional HP. If a character with a barrier takes damage, the damage is first subtracted from the barrier. Any damage remaining is lost and is subtracted from the character's HP. So it's considered separate. So in the video games, scholars and sages and other kinds of healers, excuse me for a second here, different kinds of healers can have barriers. So they might heal and then provide a shield that will take damage before the character starts taking damage. And I imagine these are going to be plentiful as the core rulebook comes out and the game's like, well, here's a bunch of barrier healers that are going to heal a little bit, but provide a big barrier as well to prevent people from taking damage in the first place. When HP falls to 0, we already went over this, they're knocked out. And to avoid confusion, it says here, when an encounter ends, characters who are knocked out regain all their HP and are afflicted with the weakened enfeeblement, which is a status condition that will do something to them. I'm not entirely sure what it does. To avoid confusion, the Game Master may decide when the NPCs and monsters reach 0 HP if they die instead of being knocked out. Just depends on what you're trying to do or what you need. If there's one specific NPC that needs to be alive at the end of the encounter, you can just be like, oh, they're knocked out. You just knocked them out. There's little, stars floating around their head. You could describe damage and what happens there. And there are tips here of when an enemy's HP falls below 50 or below 10. They even say, like, the enemy's HP gauge has turned yellow, or the enemy's HP gauge is flashing red, depending upon how gamist you really want to be with it or not. But it could be they're struggling to stand, or they're, having a hard time with it. MP is just MP. We already went over that. But natural MP recovery, while in an encounter, all adventurers will automatically recover 2 at the end of a round's adventure step before the enemy step begins. Okay, I got that wrong. Right before enemies go, they will recover some HP, some MP. Some abilities and traits have effects that alter the amount of MP a character recovers at the end of adventure step. So you could get more or less, but the idea is don't run. If you're running a deficit, you're going to have to take a break at some point. But you can safely spend 2 MP every turn because you're going to get that back. Limit breaks are actually kind of neat. Every character has a limit break. Every character has, like, when they use it, it does this thing. But these are Game Master discretion. So the Game Master says when players have limit breaks and how many they get. A party of adventurers can use up to 3 limit breaks per encounter. An adventurer has used a limit break once in an encounter, cannot do so again during the same encounter. So this is just a chance for different characters to share in the coolness of it. Yes, you're the damage dealer, you just did a really cool big one, but now somebody else gets to use one. And because they're Game Master discretion, you can have situations or phases or boss encounters where you're like, you get infinite limit breaks. Use as many as you want, or every single one of you gets a limit break right now. It could be at, like, starts a phase. You could have, like, a boss phase where you start the phase off and you say, hey, at the start of every phase, you're going to get another limit break. Use at your own discretion. And you can only have up to 3. So it might be like a 4-phased fight, so players are going to want to use a limit break at some point, but when? Entirely up to them. This is just cool. This is just neat. This is a powerful, awesome, cool ability. It's in the MMO. It's in a lot of Final Fantasy games. From 7 onwards, I believe, they really took advantage of the idea of a limit break. Some powerful ability that you get to use. Not very often. It's rare to get, or it takes a while to build up, but then you use it and it's badass and crazy. And they're here. Enhancements and enfeeblements. Same kind of thing. These are buffs and bonuses, or buffs and debuffs and stuff you get. Some important ones, though, are damage over time effects. You can inflict dots on enemies in this game. And it'll either tell you, like, the damage that's done within, like, a set of parentheses, such as .3 or .user's intelligence. An adventurer and ally that's afflicted with it, or an enemy, or what have you, takes damage specified at the end of each round's adventure step. So at the end of an adventure step, everybody gets mana back, and damage over time effects are dealt. An enemy afflicted with it suffers that damage at the end of an enemy's step. So I guess that's usually when that's just done. Okay. Prone can't take standard movement action on their turn unless they spend half their speed to get back up on their feet. It's typically 3 squares. Prone character incurs a -2 penalty on all checks. Characters receive 1 advantage die when making ability checks targeting a prone character. And it does not stack, even if it's inflicted multiple times. Slow has their speed halved and incurs a -2 on all checks. A blind character cannot see and automatically fails checks that rely entirely on vision. Characters receive 1 advantage die when making ability checks targeting a blind character. and they incur a -2 penalty on all checks. They're stunned, cannot act during their turn or use instant abilities. Any and all markers for which a stunned character is created or removed. Characters receive an advantage die when making ability checks targeting a stunned character. Stunned characters get a -5 penalty on every check. That's big. And it can only be removed via the means described in the descriptions of the infect that inflicted it. So, how do you cure this? It'll be part of that. Knocked out is knocked out. Weakness is when a character comes back from being knocked out. So, a weakened character incurs a -2 penalty on all checks. If a character afflicted with weakness is the target of another effect and inflicts weakness, they are instead afflicted with the brink of death enfeeblement. The weakened enfeeblement does not wear off at the end of a phase, can only be removed by completing a rest action, which is more or less like sleeping for the evening, or going to bed, taking a rest, taking it easy, or by the effects that specifically remove it. Brink of death incurs a -5 penalty on all checks. Character on the brink of death is the target of another effect that inflicts this enfeeblement. They are instead afflicted with the comatose enfeeblement. And brink of death, again, can only be removed by specific rules or resting. Comatose is treated as if they were knocked out for gameplay purposes. The comatose enfeeblement can only be removed by spending 1 sun, a full day in game, in a location where appropriate medical treatment is available. And they cannot receive any other enfeeblements other than death. As the name implies, a dead character has died and can no longer participate in the game. Unless otherwise specified, death cannot be reversed or removed. So again, like, revived might help a knocked out character stand back up, or a brink of death character, but death is the end all be all, like, no, your character is dead. And that is it. That is it for how to play this game. It is very straightforward. You are running encounters, you have stats, things happen at certain steps, you have abilities that occur, and then you just kind of move down the line. And that is it. That's all you really need to know as well. The Game Master's Guide, as we take a brief look at that, is really just going to give us some basic baseline information on how to run the game. Preparing for the game, first game sessions, making checks outside of an encounter as well, the passage of time and travel. There are no scenarios in the Game Master's Guide for free. That is in the starter set. In the starter set Game Master's book that I've got, I got in my hand. It's a little thicker. It's got a lot of the same rules in it. Tells you how travel's going to work and all of that. And then it has scenarios for you to run with tips and tricks and all of that in there. I think it is a great companion for starting Game Masters, just in general, for any game. I would recommend anybody read this. But for our purposes, I've kind of already explained how the game is going to run. So I would say pick up a free copy of this if you're trying to actually run a game of the Final Fantasy TTRPG, which at this point, again, is only available as the starter set. So you'd need the starter set in order to run it in the first place. But we're going to take a look at a character sheet. This is actually in the game itself proper. Somebody did scans of these so that we can see them. They come in 3 different varieties: level 30, level 40, and level 50. And as you can see, there's you get different effects, there's different things, you get things kind of change at different levels. How much, I don't really know. But if you could follow the mouse on screen a little bit here, because I can't really highlight anything. These are not really good character sheets, I gotta be honest, but they give you everything that you need to know in a way that's easy to read. So on the side, you've got your level, tank, warrior, you've got your primary attributes, all of those, the strength, dex, stir, dex, vit, int, and mund, all of those you're going to add to a check. Those are the things you're going to add to it, the roll of a d20. So as our tank warrior character is trying to perceive something that's going on in the room or trying to understand how somebody feels, they might make a mind check. That's just a d20 plus 1. But if they're trying to bash open a door, that's a d20 plus 4. Defense and magic defense, these are the numbers enemies will have to roll, usually with a d20 and a modifier of some kind, in order to deal damage to them or additional damage to them. Vigilance is 11. That is if something is in the room that has a vigilance of 11 or lower, this tank warrior character will notice it and see it. And then a speed of 5 squares. Got the max MP in pink. That's just 5. You recover 2 at the end of the adventure step. That's a really nice, like, small little note. It's really hard to see, I know. Let me try to make this little. Let me try to embiggen it. There we go. A little bigger, basically, for what we need. Max HP is 35. That's in green. And right next to it's a barrier. And then they have traits and other effects down here to describe what these things do that are on your character sheet. And then you have up here at the very top, the limit break. This is the thing you have. The trigger is immediately before one or more allied adventurers take damage. The base effect makes you the sole target of all damage inflicted by the effect. The triggered Landwalker and halves the damage you take. If an ability triggered Landwalker, the character that used that ability suffers damage equal to the amount of HP you lost. So it's a very tanky ability that you use. Primary abilities. And some of these, if you've played the MMORPG, you might recognize some of these. There's a warrior combo, heavy swing plus maim, and that's got this little line down here that leads to Storm's Path. And it says that it's a combo, or it combos in the Storm's Path. So the warrior combo, this ability, it's primary and physical, so that tells you it's a primary action to use. It's dealing physical damage, so you're going to roll a d20, or it will even tell you the target is single. The range is 1 square. The check is going to be strength. And then they do the math here for you. D20 plus 4. Because strength is going to be plus 4. It's just a D20 roll. And the CR is the target's defense. The base effect is deals 2 damage and inflicts enmity on the target. What is enmity? It says it down here in the traits and other effects. It says enemies that you have enmity on incur a -5 penalty on all ability checks that do not target you. Enmity is removed at the end of the enemy's next turn or when you are knocked out. So, that's what they do. This base effect just happens. No check. So, as you use this, you're going to deal 2 damage, and this target has enmity. That's it. It just happens. No check for that. But it combos in the Storm's Path. And it also has a direct hit ability. So you're still going to make a roll for this. But if you fail the target's defense, let's say that's a 15 and you roll a 14 or lower, you fail the check, it's still going to deal the base effect and it's still going to combo. But if you meet or beat the enemy's defense, you're going to deal 2 damage, inflict enmity, and then it says here deals an additional 1d6 damage. So it's just extra damage to it. Combo is after resolving the effects of an ability with combo, you may use one of the specified abilities at any point during your turn. You may move before doing so and may choose a new target when using this additional ability. It combos into Storm's Path. So on the same turn, for the same action, you don't have to spend anything else. You can also then use Storm's Path. It's got a check. So target's defense. The base effect, deal 2 damage and inflicts enmity on the target. Also restores 2 HP. And if, again, that's going to happen even if you fail a check. But if you make that check to hit a target, direct hit is going to deal an additional 1d6 damage. You've also got Overpower. This is all enemies within range. Its range is a 5x5 area centered on you. It's got a check as well. Base effect is just inflicts enmity on all the targets. And if you direct hit all those enemies, it's going to deal 2 damage to them. So this one is a hell of a lot weaker, but it's just there to get enemies to focus on you. And then Tomahawk. It's got a range of 5 squares instead of 1. Targets enemies' defense. It does the same thing as your warrior combo. Deals 2 damage, inflicts enmity, but it doesn't combo out. It just deals an additional 1d6 damage. Secondary abilities. You've got Rampart. You can reduce the damage you take from all abilities by 2 until the start of your next turn. You can only do it once per phase. Low Blow stuns the target until the end of turn. At the end of this turn, any character stunned cannot be stunned again during the encounter. So that's really there to prevent them from using like instant abilities if they have it. And then Berserk. Your abilities deal an additional 2 damage until the end of this turn. It lasts until the end of the turn, and you can use it 3 times per phase. So if an encounter only has 1 phase, you can use this 3 times now. Same with Rampart. You can only use it 1 time per encounter. Instant abilities, again, you can use every turn. So something like Reprisal says trigger immediately before an ability used by an enemy within 2 squares is resolved. The target is all enemies within range, and the range is a 5x5 area centered on the character. The base effect is reduces the damage dealt by the abilities of all targets by 2 until the end of this round. So that is like, oh, enemies are targeting other people, you could do Reprisal, because the attack hasn't been resolved yet. Provoke is when an enemy begins their turn. It just inflicts enmity, it says. It's got a range of 10 squares, and once per phase. All of these are once per phase. So that's not bad for a lot of instant abilities. This is less of, ooh, this is going to be a terrible, awful, no good thing, and it is more of, you only get this every now and again. So I'm hoping a lot of other instant abilities work the same way. Then we've also got a Dragoon for a damage dealer. Same thing. But they also have combos as well. They'll combo out some of their abilities here. He's got a lot of strength as well. A lot of his primary abilities are dealing in physical strength. And they're just going to combo. So True Thrust combos into either dealing additional damage, and they're dealing more. So base effect for their first combo is just to deal 3 damage. If they hit, they'll deal an additional 2d6 instead of 1. That can combo into either one of these 2 abilities. This Dragoon combo looks like it just says more damage. This Disembowel one says grants Power Surge, which is a buff or an enhancement. It says down here at the very bottom of the character sheet, while under the effects of Power Surge, your abilities deal an additional 2 damage. And it's just removed when you're knocked out, which is great. So you can do that one first and foremost in an encounter, and then just dealing extra damage everywhere you go. So in a single turn, by failing every check they make, if they whiff every check, they can do the True Thrust and Dragoon combo and deal 6 damage to a target. Just failing every check, they deal 6 damage. If they succeed, the lowest amount of damage they'd ever be able to deal is going to be 3 and 3, that's 6, 10 damage from 4d6. So they'll be at least, even if they hit but roll the lowest they can on these extra die, they're going to be dealing 10 damage. At least. Because that happens all at the same time. But if they deal the most damage, holy shit, they're dealing upwards of, 20? I believe? 2d6? That's 12 each. That's just 24 on its own. It's about 30. About 30 damage if they roll like max on everything. Crazy place. And they've got a lot of secondary abilities that they can also use once per phase or twice per phase, and instant abilities that they can use once per phase or twice per phase as well. The game also comes with a Black Mage. So we're just kind of going through all these different classes that we're going to see here in a minute as we try to resolve a combat. They work a little differently because they're using MP. So they've got 5, just like everybody else does, a lot lower HP. They've got about 21. But they're using Blizzard, Blizzard 2, and Fire 2. They don't have a whole lot of extra abilities, but they've got Thunder, Thunder 2, and Sleep. And then secondary abilities. They've got deals 3 damage to target with Scathe or Transpose. That changes what they're doing. And then some instant abilities as well. They're a little different, though, because they say consecutive invocation. On your turn, after resolving the effects of an ability that enables this trait, you may forego all standard movement until the end of your turn to use an additional invoked primary ability. You may choose a new target when using this additional ability. Consecutive invocation can only be used once per turn, and does not prevent you from using focus to perform an additional secondary action. So, let's find one of those. Consecutive invocation is in Blizzard and Fire. So using Fire on a target costs 2 MP. It's an intelligence roll. A target's magic defense is the challenge rating. God, that took me forever to say. Base effect is deals 3 damage, grants Astral Fire, and enables consecutive invocation. If you hit, you deal 1d6 extra damage. So then you can just do that again. Consecutive invocation just says you can forego any movement, all your standard movement, and just fire it off again. Or fire off something else again. But it gives you Astral Fire. And in fact, you could do fire and then fire 2. It doesn't have to be the same ability. It just allows you to use another once per turn big thing. You can do this with Thunder or Thunder 2 as well, because that gives you, or Thunder just gives you consecutive invocations. You can do with Thunder on ability, then Fire on another one. Astral Fire and Umbral Ice do things. They're an enhancement. So they say when, like, you cast Fire, you gain Astral Fire. When you're under the effect of Astral Fire, your Fire aspected abilities deal an additional 1d6, and you do not recover MP at the end of the adventure step. Astral Fire is removed when you are knocked out. Being granted Umbral Ice removes this as well. Umbral Ice is you recover an additional 2 MP at the end of the adventurer's step. So, you also... You okay? Little kitty just freaked out real quick. Oh my gosh.
Just jumped, like, literally.
Black mages also get secondary abilities as well. One of those is Transpose. You can remove Umbral Ice and grant Astral Fire. You just switch. It can only be used once per turn. And Scathe, you deal 3 damage to a target. So, a Black Mage's turn, if they're standing still, can be crazy active. Because it means they can just say, you know what, I'm going to cast Fire, get consecutive invocations, stay still, cast Fire 2, get deal a bunch of extra damage. Because that's going to deal, Astral Fire says I deal an additional d6 of damage to everything, which is great. So I'll just do that, gain additional damage. Then I'll use Scathe, and I'll focus as a secondary ability, then Focus, because I'm not moving, to use an additional secondary ability to Transpose, and then get Umbral Ice instead, so that at the end of the adventure step, I'm now gaining 4 MP back, which is everything I spent. And then on their next turn, they can kind of do the same, or like go back to Blizzard, start casting Blizzard spells, or cast Fire spells. Do the same thing, just cast Fire spells. They'll gain Astral Fire. They could do that again twice, then Scathe, then Transpose. So they could just do that over and over again. Lucid Dreaming lets you gain some extra one. Mana Font is a secondary ability that lets you get some extra one. And Mana Ward grants a barrier of 2 HP, but you can use that once per phase as well. And then the last one that we have is the White Mage, the White Magoo, our healer. Even at level 30, they do have something called Raise. It targets one knocked out character. And it allows them to res a knocked out character. But they have a lot of the same things. They've got Stone, some of the same things in the MMO. They've got Stone, this is just a damage dealing ability. But then they've got Cure 2. No roll for this. There's a special check, so they're still going to roll a d20. And the reason for this, let's see. Because it says, see if you proc an ability. Many restorative effects, such as Cure and Cure 2, list special d20 in their check field. These abilities require an ability check to determine if you score critical or if a proc effect is triggered. Okay. So Cure 2, like it says, it just says special d20, critical. You're really just checking for a critical because you can double the amount of dice that you're rolling. So you're still going to heal. You're just fishing for crits. Because regardless, it's going to heal 2d6 plus 7 HP, or critical would be 4d6 plus 7 HP. They got Medica, which is a big 5v5 centered on the caster. It restores 1d6 plus 3 HP to all targets. And the targets are all allies, so you never have to worry about healing an enemy. Repose is a debuff. It incurs a -2 penalty on all checks. And if you score a direct hit, it says it removes all markers generated by the target. And then secondary actions are Cure. So in a single turn, you could Cure 2 and then Cure. Or if you've got time for it, or they don't need that many, then you could not move and spend 2 secondary actions to do 2 cures. And those you have a bunch on. Or Arrow is another secondary ability that's a dot on a target. So even white mages can deal damage, but not as much as dragoons or black mages can. So I've left these up for a while. If people wanted to get screenshots or what have you through the whole stream, they could have. They could have, should have, would have. Now we're going to actually try to run a combat in the Final Fantasy XIV engine. We're just using Owlbear Rodeo for this. I think I can... let me see here. How do I... Okay, so we add them to initiative. Oh god, we can't do any of that. Okay, you know what? Don't want any of that. No. Owlbear Rodeo is great for our purposes, but at the same time, not really great for our purposes. Okay. We're just gonna go basically with the stats that they have. I think... Where's that? Okay, there we go. We're going to put HP under all of these targeted creatures so that we know what we're dealing with. And I've actually got the rules for these creatures, so this is nothing that I am making up. This is an encounter from the starter set, using everything from the starter set, if you has it. So these guys have 40 max HP. We'll do the same thing over here. Oh, we just add text. 40 and 40. They're big creatures, so they take up 4x4. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll just have like current HP for these guys. Yeah, because there's not a whole lot. Yeah, it's not a whole lot that you can really do here. It's very, very simple. But we'll have max current HP and then MP for all of these guys. So that's the tank. Our healer has 24 max HP, 5 MP. Our black mage has 21 and 5. And then our dragoon here has 26 and 5. Oops. 26 and 5. There we go. Boom. And then we got a dice roller, so we can do all of the dice rolling that we need here in the actual, what is this? Fairness. Okay. I guess that's how... Okay, sure. You are... Okay. But combat has started. Combat has begun. You can tell by the lo-fi music playing. These enemies also have their own stat. So I can't show this to you because this is all in the Game Mastery Guide. But these two enemies are Antling Sentries. They got a Vigilance of 10. Their defense is 14. Their magic defense is 12. Those are the magic numbers that we're working with. And they also have stats. But they also have abilities. So they're going to use the same thing. Primary abilities. They have a combo that says attack using Trap Jaws, which is an attack they have. Then immediately use Acid Spray, which is an AoE like marker that we get to have, which I think is the... I think that's going to be the... Oh no, that's not the pointer. That's... Is it? Do we have a... I thought we have a... Oh no, that's... Okay. Wow, our old Bear Rodeo is still fucking bad. Oh my god. Just does not have enough of what we need. But we're going to make it work anyways. So the start of the round, we're going to have our initiative as follow. Just for simplicity's sake, it's going to go Warrior, Mage, Warrior, Mage, Warrior, White Mage, Black Mage, and Dragoon. So our Warrior, our Healer, our Caster, and our Physical Damage Dealer. And yeah, I've got them in this order too. on all of our propelled work. So using everything that we just saw, if you had screenshots, you can follow along, but I'll be saying everything that I'm doing anyways. In painstaking detail. Our warrior is going to immediately move up, and he's just going to get enmity. He's going to make sure that both of these enemies attack him. So he wants to use Overpower. That's got a range of 5x5 centered on this character. So 1, 2, 3, 4. He's within range, but he's going to move 1, 2, 3. He's going to move up right here and just stay there. Then he's going to use Overpower, which is going to target both of these creatures. They have enmity. Oh, and it deals 2 damage to them. Hot damn. So 38. 38. Just 2 damage. Just 2 damage, and they suffer enmity. Oh, I have to roll for that. I'm sorry. It's going to require a direct hit. Yes, roll that. What are we looking at? It's a 13 plus strength, so we're doing plus 4. Overpower says we're looking at the target's defense, which we said was a 14. So we've already made it. So yes, the direct hit goes off, and it does deal damage. So both of these critters have enmity on our tank. So unless they attack, if they attack anybody else, it's going to be at a -5. That's his primary ability. He moved, so he can't focus. So he's going to use he's not going to use a secondary ability, actually, because all of them are same time only, same turn only. No instant abilities from anybody, so then we're going to move on to our healer. Healer can't do much of anything right now. Save for to kind of run around and get in position. So she's going to get right... She's going to get right here. No, she's going to get right there. Because now she's in range of stuff. So she's going to try to attack this guy right here. She's going to cast Stone... Yeah, she's going to cast Stone 2 and Arrow in that order. Get some damage over time going on these guys. So the first one is Stone. That's a d20 roll. Oh, close. But the magic defense is 12, so naturally we hit them and beat them. That's going to deal 2 damage to the target plus an additional d6. Ah. Okay, so 3. So that goes to 35. 35 damage as you hurl a rocket there. They kind of... Then, secondary ability, I'm just going to use Arrow on a single target. It's going to be the same target, this guy, and it's going to inflict a dot. So let's go ahead and give him a colored ring of bleh. There we go. This guy's got a dot on him, and he's going to take 3 damage at the end of the enemy step, because that's when all of that resolves. And then that's it for our white mage. They're just going to stay in position. Our black mage is going to go ham, like we just described when we were looking at their character sheet. They're going to go bonkers. Fire has a range of 10 squares. This is an 8x8 map for those paying attention. So he can hit anything, anywhere. He's going to stay far in the back where he is underneath this tree and just start wailing. And he's going to start wailing on this creature that's already been hit some. Actually, that one's only going to suffer some damage. Both the Black Mage and the Dragoon say, we'll take out this other one. We'll take out this other one that isn't a target. We know it's not going to hit us, but that way the tank can try to deal some damage to another target instead. So, Black Mage is going to go after this one as well. They're going to start with fire. So they spend 2 mana to do that. There are 3. That's a d20 roll. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a crit. So we double the die. So that's going to deal 3 damage, plus an additional d6, plus an additional d6 because we crit. So 2 d6s. Oh, come on. Give us 4 plus 3, a total of 7. So that's going to be 31. Everybody's about to see me fail math class in real time, baby. It's exciting. Fire also gets us Astral Fire and enables consecutive invocation, which we're absolutely going to take advantage of. We are also going to cast Thunder 2. Thunder 2 allows us to... that's going to cost us 2 MP again. So we're absolutely going to do that. We're down to 1. Thunder 2 is a 5x5 area within 10 squares of this character. So we're going to have it target this area right here. And it's going to hit both of these guys. And it's going to be a dot of 3 that inflicts that. And whenever the dot 3 is inflicted by this ability, deal damage, roll a single d20. On a 19 or 20, the following proc effect triggers, which is Thundercloud. The next lightning aspected ability you use this phase costs 0 MP and deals an additional 6 damage. So that's very much like the game where like you can cast it for free and it deals all of its damage. We can just do it again. So we're going to ensure both of these guys get hit by a thunder ability. And that is the base effect. We don't roll the dot for it. So these guys just immediately get a dot. Yeah, yellow for thunder seems apropos. Absolutely. So they're both inflicted by thunder. Actually, that's hard to see. What am I doing? Do light blue. Yeah. They both have thunder automatically. But when they take damage, the black mage will roll a d20 to see if I cast it again, if it deals even more. That was all just from my consecutive invocation. Those were just primary abilities. I still have a secondary ability, and I get 2 of them because I'm not going to move. So the first one is going to be Scathe. I'm going to deal it to this guy over here. There is no check. It just deals 3 damage right out of the gate. 31, 20, 20. That's going to be, what's that, 28? Yes. Failing math class immediately. So already damn near close to half done. And then for my second one, for my secondary ability, because I'm focusing, I'm not moving, I'm going to use Transpose. It removes Astral Fire and grants me Umbral Ice, which means at the end of the adventure step, I get an additional 2 MP back. I'm going to get all my MP back, straight up to full, baby. But that happens at the end of the adventure step, when all of us have gone, which is going to be at the end of the Dragoon's turn, which is right now. He is going to move 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait, where did he start? He's going to move 1, 2, 3. Get far over here and attack diagonally at this creature that the Black Mage was hitting as well. He's going to use his first primary ability, which is True Thrust. It's a single target, range of 1 square, and it's a D20 check. Oh, I can change how my dice look. Ooh, pretty. Yeah, let's go with that. Nice and easy to reach. Kaboom! Oh, maybe. There's a D20 plus 5. This creature's defense is a 14, so we make that. So it's going to deal 3 damage and an additional 2d6. So let's roll those 2d6 right now before we combo out. Oh my god! So that's 9, 12 damage to this thing. Hold on. I'm just going to help myself. I'm just going to help myself. 12 damage to this thing immediately. This thing is hurt. It combos, True Thrust combos, and we're going to combo into... Let's see here. Power Surge deals an additional 2 damage. Yeah, we're going to combo into Disembowel, which is going to give us a buff to Power Surge. So let's roll another D20 and see if we get a direct hit. No, we do not. Because even with 5, that's just going to get us to 9. Its defense is 14. So we still deal another 3 damage to it. That still happens. And we still get Power Surge, which is going to... Everything that we do gets an additional 2 damage. But we don't get a direct hit, so we don't roll that extra die for that. Sad day for us. Then we get a secondary ability. Our Dragoon secondary abilities are all... let's see here. No, we don't want any of that. Ooh, Life Surge is pretty good, though. That's not bad. But we don't want to use any of those because those are just once per phase. So we don't want to use those just yet. But our phase is done. The adventure step is done. So any dots that any of our friends have, they go off, and then everybody recovers mana. Actually, our white mage spent some mana. She spent one. She spent 2 mana, so she's going to get that 2 mana back. Our black mage spent 4, but he's got Umbral Ice on him, so he's going to gain 4 mana back, all the way to his max of 5. He's Gucci. Now it is this creature's turn. And we're going to try desperately to... Oh, here we go. I can just use a pointer for stuff. What is that? Q? Q and W? Oh, nice. Okay. This creature is going to go. It is going to stay there. Both of these creatures, this one and this one, are both just going to attack the tank at the same time. They're just going to... at the tank. So they're going to use Trap Jaws and then immediately use Acid Spray. And that is a marker. We're going to try our damnedest to make that marker look good. We'll start with this one that's all bloody and... he's just going to attack this way. This guy is going to move in and attack that way. So he's going to try to hit the warrior with Trap Jaws. That is a D20 check. It's strength. These creatures also have their own modifiers, but it's doing the math for us. D20 plus 5. This is actually at a range of 2. So this guy doesn't even have to move. He's not going to. Let's see. To hit, that's going to be a 9 plus 5. Oh, I don't. Okay, I don't care about that. How do I get rid of this? There we go. It was a 9 plus 5. So that's going to be a 14. And our tank warrior has a defense of 15. So it fails. So it doesn't get the direct hit of dealing extra damage, but it does deal 5. So our little warrior man here immediately goes down to 35 HP. Sad day for us. But he's fine. Then he's going to use Acid Spray. The origin is a square adjacent to this character. So it is going to hit. Let me see if we can draw here. Maybe. Maybe. Possibly. No, that's a marker. That's literally like a marker. Grab. No. It's going to be a polygon. So it's going to hit... So it's going to hit this square. And then it's kind of going out in 3 directions. Actually, yeah, it's going to... can be in any square adjacent to the antling, pointing away from it. Okay, so this guy is going to move. He's just going to move right here. And then we'll say this guy's actually going to move right here. Absolutely. Good idea. Actually, this antling is going to move over there. Perfect, because they got a range of 2. Just going to go back, just do a little thing different. Because then it's going to hit this square. Then it's going to... like kind of triangle balloon out a little bit, and it's gonna hit these squares, and then an additional one over here. It's gonna hit all of these squares. So that's really gonna balloon out in a big way, and that happens at the start. So this is Acid Spray. Its origin is a square adjacent to the character, which is the antling. Marker area is a stationary cone extending up to 2 squares away. And it has a diagram, so it literally just says like this is going to be like a triangle diagram. The target is all enemies within the marker area. The marker trigger is the beginning of this character's next turn. And anybody caught in the marker is going to have 4d6 damage to all targets. This one is going to do the same thing. It's got a reach of 2, so it's going to try to use Trap Jaws. So let's roll to see if we get that direct hit against our warrior. 9 plus 5 again is a 14. It just misses. It's still going to deal 5 damage to the target. Bad day for that. So now our white mage has a job to do. But then it's going to do the same ability. It's going to target this area right here. So then let's draw that out. It's going to be that square. Then it's going to be these squares right here. And then it's going to be these squares right here. So our white mage was pretty smart because this crosshatch section, the antlings are caught in it. But again, this is just going to deal damage to all enemies within the marker area. The target is all enemies within the market area. So they can be in their own marker and not suffer any damage for that. And they'll be fine. So yeah, our warriors screwed, but everybody else is very smartly positioned. Our warriors got to get the hell out of dodge, though. But it's the end of the enemy step. Dots occur. Damage over time effects occur. Let's see here. From arrow, that's a dot of 3. This one is affected by arrow, so it's going to take 3 damage from that. Going down to 32. And then both of these guys are suffering from thunder, which is a dot of 3 on all targets. And because... Oh, when the dot inflicted by this ability deals damage. So we just roll 1d20, not for each creature, but it's still dealing an extra 3. 32, so that goes down to 29. And then this creature goes down to 10. Oh, that one's nearly dead. But then we roll, our black mage will roll a d20. Okay, it's just a flat check. We're looking for a 19 or 20 to proc Thunder 2's proc. With all that damage dealt, they don't recover anything at the end of their turn. If it would tell us in their like little stat block. And now we're back up to the end step turn. We've ended. Combat's not done. The encounter's not done. We go right back up to the adventure step in the same order that adventurers are taking their turns in. So then we start with our tank again. Our tank is fucked. They gotta move. They gotta get out of there. Our tank is gonna correctly assume that this one's going to die in a couple of turns. The Dragoon can easily take care of him, and the Black Mage is better. Let me get out my marker here. My pointer. Where's my pointer? Q. Our Black Mage is better suited to take out this creature. Because he's farther away, he can stand still and deal a ton of damage. Our Dragoon is better situated to take out this guy. And our White Mage can help out too if she really wants to. But we'll get to that on her turn. So our Warrior is just going to move and attack this guy. He's going to deal less damage than any of the damage dealers are. But he's just going to move right here. Kaboom. And he is going to target this Antling here. He's going to do this instead of just standing there and getting enmity. He's just going to try to gain the enmity of the only creature he believes is going to be left standing. So he's just going to do his warrior combo that will generate enmity on the target because they've lost it. It's the end of the phase. Enmity stays at the end of the enemy's next turn, which they just took. So he's going to try to build enmity on this creature over here. So that's just going to be a d20 as we start with our warrior combo. Heavy swing and maim. So yeah, that's a single target, one square away. We're targeting this creature's defense, so a 14. Oh! D20 plus 4. It's going to be 7, 11. Does not hit, but it's going to still deal 2 damage to it. Oop. Taking it down to 27. It also gains enmity against our tank, and it still combos in the Storm's Path. So we're going to do that again as well. We're going to do Storm's Path. Single target, one square away. We're going to target its defense with a roll of a d20 plus our strength. Oh, that we get. That's going to be an 18. We rolled its defense. Plus modifiers, we got it. So we're going to... A lot of things happen here. We're going to deal 2 damage, inflict enmity. We're going to restore 2 HP on ourselves, taking us to 27 instead. And then we're going to deal an additional 2 damage plus a d6. 5, not bad. Not bad for a tank. That's going to be 22. Oh yeah, this sucker is going to be dead. Coming next turn. Secondary action, it is going to... Let's see here. Oh, I could have done Berserk. Okay, I could also do the Thrill of Battle, because that would give me 1d6 plus 2 HP, and give me a barrier, which could be nice. Which I think... You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to assume this is the only phase of battle. We're going to do that. We can only do it once. Let's roll us another d6. Oh, good. So we gain 3 HP. And also gain a barrier of 3 HP. So that takes us to 30, but we've got a barrier of 3. We'll just put that in parentheses in front of that. There we go. So, not bad. We're looking pretty good. I don't think our white mage needs to heal us, especially if some of these enemies are going to be taken away. So, we're good. Tank's turn is done. Now we go to the healer's turn. And that was, yeah, an instant... Oh, thrill of battle we do immediately before taking damage. Oh, we screwed that up. We'll keep what we have. Who cares? We did it wrong. So we could cure our tank. But I think it's going to be way better for us to just start wailing on some of these creatures here. So we're going to have a secondary ability for our white mage. We're going to inflict arrow on this guy. So let's do the same thing. Let's have a purple ring and that. So both of them are suffering from arrow and thunder. So they're taking 6 damage at the end of their turn, regardless. Then let's cast Stone 2 against this creature over here. So we got to roll a d20. We're going to add 5 because our mind is 5. And this is what we're checking. And we're targeting this creature's defense, magic defense, which is 12. 5 and 5 is 10. Oh, well, we deal 2 damage to it. Which means the AoEs are not enough to take this thing out. But I have an idea. Our black mage is going to kick some ass. Because that's all they're going to do. They're going to hang out. They're going to still stay within healing range. They're out of range of all of these AoEs. And if they need to, they're fine. So yeah. Oh, also, that costs 2 MP to do. So they spend 2 of their MP. Which we didn't track last time. Our black mage is going to rain hellfire. So, they're going to start off with casting... Ooh, they could do Fire 2 immediately. I think what they're going to do instead is they're going to use a secondary ability called Transpose. We did that before to get Umbral Ice at the end of our turn to get all of our MP back. We're going to try to end the fight now, this round, so I don't care about my MP. We're going to gain Astral Fire, which now means that all of our fire damage deals an additional d6 damage, even if we miss our checks. So we're going to do that. We're going to target this creature up here first with just a regular fire, because that's going to be a little cheaper for us. So we spend 2 mana to do that. And then we just got to roll a d20. We're checking intellect. Ours is 5. So d20 plus 5. Do I do it? 7, 8, 9, 10. Exactly. It's a 12, and this creature's magic defense is a 12. It's a meter beat. So we did it. So we're going to deal 3 damage to the target plus a d6 plus 3. Let's deal that right now. Oh, 8 damage. Nice. That's going to be 14 health left. Plus... Oh, it's a direct hit, so that's an additional d6. 6. Oh my god, nice. That's so good. That's got 8 health left. Plus, we get consecutive invocation, which is exactly what we want. We're going to cast Fire 2. We're going to try to hit both of these creatures. We're going to target this square right here. Because it's cost of 3 MP we're going to spend that. Target is all enemies within range, and the range is a 5x5 area within 10 squares of the caster, which this is. This will catch everybody, but it's just hitting enemies. So this is our big AoE. So we're going to spend all of that mana that we've got. That puts us at 0. We aren't getting any back. So we're not going to be able to do much of anything on our next turn, which is going to suck, but we're trying to end this right now. So then, it's a single check, because we're affecting multiple creatures. It's an intellect check, which is going to be a d20, plus our intellect, 5. And we got to target it. We got to meet or beat a 12, which is the target's magic defense. Yeah. Oh, yeah! Oh, we did it. Okay. We're dealing 2d6 plus 3 damage to everything. So we're dealing at least 5 to everything. 2d6. 7, 8, 9, 10. That kills all of these creatures. They're dead. Then the Dragoon gets to go, but there's nothing there to hit or attack or target, so that he's kind of done. He's kind of out. Our Black Mage is done. Our Dragoon doesn't do much of anything. At that point, we go into the recovery step. Our White Mage recovers some MP. Our Black Mage recovers none. And these targeted abilities, all that stuff, none of that happens because these enemies are dead. Now that would, at that point, we check to see if the encounter is done. If there's a second phase and more enemies show up, then we'd probably clear the board and we go into the next phase. All of our stats are the same though. So that next turn, that Black Mage really has to figure out what they're going to do on their turn, which is probably reposition, transpose to Umbral Ice so they can get a bunch of mana back, and then try to start playing more conservatively. Meanwhile, our Dragoon is probably just going to jump around and beat the crap out of anything that comes within range. But that is a battle. A very quick one, actually. It's just 2 rounds, and you're done. Of the Final Fantasy XIV. The TTRPG. Now, we're nearly done. We're going to go for a little bit longer, as I'm going to give some notes on what I think what all of this means. Let's go to font and actually make this real big. What in the world? Let's go to 24. There we go. Sure. Wild the notepad has that kind of settings. Okay. Okay. So let's go to pros. Well, let's say pros, cons, and then wild speculation at the end, because I know very little. Pros and cons, we're just going to weigh what the starter set gives us. Immediately, it's highly accessible. Highly accessible. The tools given to you, everything that you have, is very new player friendly. The Game Master's Guide is really good for new Game Masters. The Player's Guide is really good and helpfully written for new players. And it's easy to teach. So even if new players are coming to the table, if the Game Master just reads both of those books, they can say, hey, here's what your characters are, here's what they are, here's what they do, make up a couple of things about them, how you know one another, and then we'll get the scenarios started. And there's scenarios in the book that tell you everything you need to know. Checks, what to check for, different areas you're at. There's maps, which are straight from the MMORPG. It's really accessible. For a starter set, for just starting out in TTRPGs, if you're just interested, this is a really good one. Second pro that I like is it's simple, straightforward system. It is simple and to the point. There's not a whole lot that you've really got to sit and think about with this game. It's, you're rolling a d20 for everything. It's a d20 system for checks. Anything extra that you deal, whether it's extra damage or you're taking damage or anything, it's just a number of d6s, usually plus a small number. That also means, and this is another pro, I guess this would be number distribution, fairly fit, pretty closed in. D6s are pretty easy to close in, like damage numbers that you're dealing. It's easy to get a good range with those. You're always doing a little something, which also means, again, no turn wasted. I love this. This is actually something that Matt Colville has been trying to solve with the MCDM TTRPG. They're still working on like their core roles and what that looks like and what you're rolling and how that is, but they're trying to figure out, if you take a turn, how do you walk away doing something? Because everybody generally agrees, even in Pathfinder, even especially in D&D, saying, I'm going to do a thing on my turn, and you pick the die and you roll a 3 and nothing happens and you just go, welp. Same with spellcasters. I'm going to cast this big, huge spell, and you spend the spell slot, and you roll your die, and nothing happens, and you go, well, and you just walk away, and that's your turn. That's your whole turn. That's all it is. This, you're not wasting a whole lot of anything. If you use an ability, something is happening. And then you're just checking to see if cool stuff happens, if you deal extra damage, if extra things happen. You like for our warrior and our dragoon that have combo abilities, you're not checking to see if you combo. That happens automatically. You're not checking to see if you get enmity or cool buffs to you. That happens automatically. You're just checking for extra damage. So that's a great way to have a system like that. It also is great because you still really want those checks to happen. They aren't meaningless because you're dealing a ton of extra damage. It's not just a little, oh, another 1, another 2. It's you're rolling dice and hopefully dealing anywhere from 1 to 6 extra damage on top of what you're doing. So it's a great way to do that. It's also great, too, because you could just roll those dice together. You can roll a d20 and a d6 together, see if you hit, and if you do, hey, that's the roll that you got. Perfect. Awesome. Great. Very straightforward, very, very simple. And I like that there is no turn wasted on that. Another pro of this that we didn't really get into too terribly much is Eorzea. Or the world of Final Fantasy XIV. The world is really rich. There's tons of lore in it. This is also a con as well. We'll get into why. But I personally really like the world of Eorzea. It's very high fantasy. There's crystals everywhere. People can fly. There's giant birds that are used for domestication. They use as like horses and stuff. Fantasy creatures. There's spells everywhere. Everybody has access to magic. It's very high magic. Very high fantasy. The world of Final Fantasy XIV is very, very rich for strife, for exploration, for roleplay opportunities. There's a lot to Eorzea as a world, as a continent, that allows for a lot of really cool shit to happen in it. And it is set up for that kind of existence. There's a lot of, even in D&D and Pathfinder, where they'll say, oh, less in Pathfinder, actually. In D&D, they'll say, like, oh, the Sword Coast is a very dangerous place. Oh, the world is very dangerous. Sure. But then you watch the D&D movie, and you realize the only place they're really in danger is in the Underdark, and then in the city where there's, like, a big maze going on. That's it. As they're wandering around the world, they aren't accosted by monsters. Like, you see the main characters traveling across the entire Sword Coast, and, like, no encounters happen or occur. They just aren't important. So how dangerous the world really is, we don't really know. Pathfinder is a little better with this. Galarian, they're setting there. They're like, here's an area where there is a ton of zombies. Here's an area where there's tons of, like, robot and ancient tech and things like that. There's high magic over here. And so they'll kind of set threats everywhere. I do like Eorzea as a high fantasy world because they're like, look, monsters are everywhere. They are right out the city gates. There are a bunch of enemy factions of creatures from the Amalja to the Sahagan that all want different things. And they are hostile. They are mean-spirited. They are actively against the allied races of Eorzea in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. So lots of opportunity to have conflict right out of the gate with very little effort. Which I imagine, and I hope, is going to be in the core rulebook. But this is really cool. What other pros can I think of about this system? It's easy to teach, it's easy to run, it's very highly accessible. There's no turn wasted. I will say this as well. This is the best... This is the best Final Fantasy XIV simulator on the market in a TTRPG setting. If you search around on Reddit, there's a project going on to bring the setting and spells and lore and races of Final Fantasy XIV into Dungeons & Dragons. It's an entire fan project, so they can't charge for it. It's all free. You know, they're just using things from the SRD of D&D and then just bringing in lore and stuff. But because of the lore they're bringing in, they can't sell it. So it's an entirely fan-led, fan project. Can't buy it. But you can get it and play it, and it's constantly changing and evolving. It's all fan-led, which is really, really cool and neat. But that is taking Eorzea and the world and the spells and all that and trying to make them applicable in D&D and trying to make it work and simulate. There's Fabula Ultima, which I really like. It's one of my favorite systems currently. And a lot of people are already immediately like, oh, let's just run Final Fantasy XIV with this. And you can, very easily. And you can remake a lot of the classic jobs in Final Fantasy XIV in Fabula Ultima very easily. That's something you can, that's quick to do. But this game is the best simulator of Final Fantasy XIV combat and how it works currently on the market. Melee characters are comboing out abilities. Mages are working on their mana, trying to make sure they don't run a deficit or spend too much. They're trying, you know, healers are trying to make sure that they're healing every turn and not overhealing, because that could be wasting an action. But they're trying to make sure everybody is staying alive. There are markers where everybody needs to move out of the way or stack and all come together. There's a ton of different things that this game is doing that Final Fantasy XIV does agnostically as an MMO. And this is trying to replicate that, and it's the best simulator of it on the market. It's the easiest simulator of it. D20 plus a D6, and it just works. And it just does everything that you need it to do. These are a lot of pros, which I really, really like. What about some cons? What about this? Well, first off, the starter set is $60. That is a lot of money for what you're getting. You're getting 3 separate character sheets at 3 separate levels. You're getting some basic books, some basic rules, but you aren't getting rules of like how to make your own characters. That's all coming much later. You're getting like a couple of maps, which leads to the second con, I guess. Big board game energy. So for $60, you're kind of getting like a Final Fantasy XIV board game. There's 3 scenarios that you can run in it with pre-made characters. You can run it with fewer because there's rules to have like chocobo companions take different roles, and that's really cool. So it's very simple, and you can run this with a lot of different sizes of people. I would say also 4 players max. But it's going to feel like a board game. The battle maps are there. They're pre-made and laid out. There's nothing beyond those bounds, so no, you cannot move off the map or even further away. It just exists as it exists. It's very, very board gamey. Speed is just measured in squares. Vigilance is just, do you have a vigilance stat? There you go. You'll notice something or no, you don't. There's no rolls for that. Checks are really just to hit stuff or try to do something in the world. And that is basics, the 5 basic stats you have. For $60, it's real big board game energy. I don't see a problem with this because I play a lot of board games, but at a $60 price point, I've gotten more out of a board game than I have with this. And some players are looking at this and going, there's other starter sets that are $50 or $40 that give you way more. Come with the core rulebook, come with a couple of characters, come with a rule set to like get you going and out the door. Even Fabula Ultima has an introductory adventure that you can download for free, and then you can just get the book. So you can have the book, you could, play this introductory adventure, get used to it, and then either make your own characters or translate these characters further into the game, start building a world, and just go with it. This does not have that in it. There's no way to play this and say, now here's what you do to keep going. It is just, you play this, well done, good for you, you've done it. Now wait for the core rulebook to come out. And that's it. So this is a closed product. We'll say this. There's nothing outside of it. And it does have that kind of big board game energy to it. There's still like checks that you can make. There's other stuff you can get. There's items you can find, but all of that is specified. Very much like a board game. And like we said, 4 players max. They describe a light party in here, just like in Final Fantasy XIV, which is a tank, a healer, and DPS, which this game gives you. That is the exact light party makeup in Final Fantasy XIV. 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 damage dealers. But that's it. So if you have 5 people that want to play, there's nothing for that 5th player to do. They can try to take like a chocobo companion or extra chocobos along with and have a much simpler time of it, where these companions just get like 1 or 2 moves they get to do, and that is it. There's not a whole lot. So this is really limited. So only a few people can ever play this at a time. It might be good for like introductory adventures and things like that, as players can get used to what this looks like. But if a lot of people are interested, if I like take this to a board game shop or a board game cafe or say, I'm going to run this for people, whoever's interested. If I get a lot of signups, well, suddenly that's a problem because I can only take 4 at a time. And a lot of people are just going to be hanging out watching or taking turns or what have you. So it's not very many. It's highly accessible, but it's also highly limited. And while the system is there, the number distribution is fairly fit. The number distribution is fairly wild as well. Again, we've talked about it before. A D20 check is going to have wild results. This is kind of balanced out by the fact that there is no turn wasted, which is pretty nice, and I do like that. But that's really in combat. If you're making a check, you're still rolling a D20 plus a modifier. That gets wild results. So their role play is going to feel, and that's another con, I guess. Feels wildly different from combat. Encounters are going to feel very different. Role play is going to be wild numbers everywhere, small modifiers, wild things that you're doing, and then you get into combat and it's very board gamey, and you're playing almost exclusively to your strengths. You're more likely to be successful at anything and everything that you're doing, and combats are fairly quick. And then you get back into role play, and it feels very different. It feels like 2 separate systems that are utilizing the same rule set. It feels kind of different. And also, this was brought up as well from another reviewer that looked at this that I saw on Reddit. I cannot remember their name, but if you search on Reddit for the Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG subreddit, their review is there. And that is... Wow. If I can spell. Roleplay expression is highly limited. There's no way to play, as far as this is concerned, an intelligent tank. There's no way to play a highly charismatic dragoon. There's no way to play a curmudgeonly black mage that is mechanically supported by the system. You certainly can. You can always try to do that. But like charisma checks are really just going to be a random check. It's either going to be like intelligence, probably mind, more often than not, as you're trying to be mindful of what you're saying or how you're acting, but that's kind of it. Because there's 5 stats and no skills, you are kind of limited in how you role play, how you play through this game entirely. Which again, solidifies the big board game energy of this. You're kind of going to go to a place, there's something here, you're going to try to look for the information that's present. You're just kind of moving things along until you get to the next combat encounter, wherein you get to like really move your character and take your turn and get these things and these cool abilities and all that. Roleplay expression is highly limited in this game so far from what we have, because that's all we can really look at. So that is it for the starter set for what we have. I am a fan of it, but I can definitely see its flaws, and they are there. I think this product, the starter set, and probably the TTRPG when it comes out, it is not out yet, like the core rulebook and the Game Master's Guide. They aren't out yet. But when those do come out, I think this is going to be a game to play if you're a fan of Final Fantasy XIV and tabletop RPGs in general. I think this is... Here's what I mean. I think this product is going to be solely used as a bridge between two nerddoms, niches, or products. If you play Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, but you're a fan of tabletop games, this is really going to appeal to you because you're going to already know a lot about what the abilities are, what the games are, how to make a character. You're going to know what a lot of that is, and then you'll get to see it happen in a tabletop setting. And that's interesting. I think if you're intimidated by Final Fantasy XIV, or you don't want to play it, or like some friends of mine have said, they don't want to play it because they know they're going to get way too into it, and that's a problem for them. Or you're just intimidated by it. You're intimidated by the skill it might take to be a tank or a healer, or what you imagine the skill it would take to be a tank or a healer, or how to play the game or the community or anything like that. If you're intimidated by any of that, but you still want to try and engage with the world of Eorzea and the classes and the class structure and all of that, and that's something that still interests you, then this is going to be a product you use to bridge yourself to that IP and that world and the kind of characters that can play in it. But I think that's really what this product is going to be. It's going to be a bridge between those two fandoms. I don't think this is going to have a lot of weight outside of, I just like tabletop RPGs, and I found this one, and I think it's pretty good. It's not, this product itself is not robust enough. I don't know about the actual game itself. That being said, it's time for some wild speculation. First of which, does level 1 equal level 30? In the starter set, there are 3 copies of 4 separate characters, a tank, the healer, and then our 2 damage dealers. But they come in level 30, level 40, and level 50. 10 level increments after you gain a job in the MMORPG. In Final Fantasy, the video game, you start at level 1, and like our warrior starts as a marauder. It's called a marauder. They wield a 2-handed axe, you get some abilities, and you start going around. And the abilities are the same as you'll get as a warrior. Then once you hit level 30, you're given a task to talk to somebody else that will give you a job crystal, which contains like all the knowledge of previous warriors past. And this is a whole separate subsection of story that you get to go through. And when you have this job crystal, you become a warrior properly. You get to wear warrior specific gear, and you gain huge buffs across the board to your stats that would better benefit a warrior. And then you'll get extra abilities, and these extra abilities you have will change and interact in different ways. But that is how that works. You get that at level 30. So when this game comes out, are we making level 30 characters? Or like our level 1 is level 30? So is there going to be 20 levels to this game where we start at level 30, and then level 10 is level 40, and level 20 is level 50? Is that how that's going to work? I have no idea. I'm fascinated by it. I don't know why they would write it out like that, but again, I think it's because this product is a bridge. I think it is, level 30 is a level 1 in this game because that's when you become a warrior. That's when Conjurer becomes a white mage. That's when Thaumaturge becomes a black mage. That's when Lancer becomes a dragoon. Just in the starter set already. That's when Archer becomes a bard. That's when Arcanist becomes either a scholar or a summoner. All sorts. That's how that generally works. So instead of saying, oh, you're a marauder or a gladiator, instead they say, no, you start out as a warrior or a paladin, respectively. That's how that would work. That'd be really weird. That'd be really bizarre. Speaking of which, little change upon level up. Just looking at these individually, and again, if you can find these scanned documents, like I did, somebody actually scanned all these in. Between levels 30, 40, and 50, you gain a couple of abilities, and that is it. You very rarely ever gain stat increases. Your baseline character is very rarely ever increasing. That is really flat. You might gain like a +5 in your core stat, and then by the end of the game, it looks like you gain a +1 in it, and that's kind of it. But you're gaining a lot of extra abilities. So it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of changes as you level up in the game. Furthermore, this game system, and as far as I know, I've done very little research on this, so I could be speaking out of my ass, but the way this is written looks like it's one-shot specific. You're going on an adventure, you're doing a thing. This adventure is a level 30 adventure. This adventure is a level 40 adventure, so on and so forth. So leveling up here is less a matter of like going through a campaign, and it's more one-shot specific. This might be, I mean, a lot of people out there might be rolling their eyes and going, "Oh man," but that's because we're here in the West, where we really like campaigns, and we're going over to people's houses and playing campaigns. In Japan, as far as I have learned, and again, I could be wildly talking out of my ass in this because I know very little about the gaming culture over there. But from what I have learned and gleaned from other Japanese designed tabletop RPGs and other systems made by Japanese TTRPG designers, the one shot is more played. And the big reason for that is because there's less space to play. So you're going to a shop to play. You're not inviting people over to your home. You're going somewhere else where they've got the space. You're playing in a one shot. And because of the work culture in Japan, it does make sense that the time commitment is less. You're having less of a time commitment, so it's easier to just do a one shot. It's easier to just say, like, I'm here, here's a character, let me make a character real quick, and then let's go on an adventure. And then that character is done, and you try it again. You might do a different character or so like that. This also has to do with the way that the book was written, where it says upon level ups or continuing through scenarios, certain abilities might carry over, but you only have abilities for that one session, and that's it. So character creation might literally be, depending upon the level you are, you get a certain number of ability points, and you spend those to buy abilities you want, things you want to have, things you want to get. So this might be a game system that is highly specific to one-shots. That say, look, you're different warriors and different adventurers in the land of Eorzea. You may or may not be warriors of light. You can continue your adventure if you really want to. Here's how to do campaign-based gameplay. But here's a character, you start at level 30, here's some stats, figure out where they want to go, and then you'll buy some abilities, buy some equipment, and you're off. And that's it. Because there's also, as far as we know, no gear or equipment. There was no gear or equipment rules in this book that we read through. There was no gear or equipment listings on our character sheets. None. Zero. Goose egg. They don't exist. So what does that look like in the final product? We have no idea. We have no idea what it looks like in the final product. If it's going to even be important, because in the video game, that makes the character. That gives them stat increases. That gives them boosts to different stats that they have. It's necessary. There's whole left sides and right sides character builds. You can only be a class because you're wielding this specific kind of gear, and then you're looking for upgrades to those. That could be a really simple system. It really could, to just kind of cut out a bloat and help players make characters faster and quicker and easier, which I know I would really appreciate. But there's no gear or equipment in this game so far. That's a little weird. It's very, very weird. Yeah, it's wild and bizarre. And we got to exactly 500 characters. But I think I'm going to stop there because that's all I can think about. Again, I am a fan of this product because I am a fan of both tabletop RPGs and a big fan of Final Fantasy XIV. It's my favorite video game. I really like those. I think this would be really good for the beautiful fiance, for instance, because she's a big fan of TTRPGs, but she's been intimidated to play Final Fantasy XIV for various reasons. The massive time commitments, skill-based gameplay, the community, all of that stuff, just being online. So this would be a great way for her and other players that are intimidated by the MMORPG to get into it. While this is $60, it's also a hell of a lot cheaper because you don't need to go and buy a computer or a PlayStation system if you don't already have one, then buy the video game, then buy the relevant expansions you need, then buy the subscription to the game in order to keep playing. Like, yes, there is a free trial available for the video game, and takes you through award-winning content. But to keep playing, it can be pretty pricey. It can be pretty expensive. This is like one and done. $60 and you're done and you're good. And then maybe a couple of extra dollars for dice. And that's kind of all you need. So this is a lot more accessible because it is a hell of a lot cheaper as well. But if you're a fan of the video game and you are really interested in TTRPGs, either want to get into them, get your feet wet, or you've played D&D and want to see what else is out there, this is a pretty good system for that. It's really nice. If you're just interested in Final Fantasy XIV, you have no interest in tabletop games, this is going to be really boring to you. If you've got an interest in tabletop RPGs and you're looking around for other systems, this might be too simplistic for you or too limiting for you. I really think this product itself is just, the starter set is just a bridge between these two fandoms to kind of meet in the middle and be like, hey, not bad. But for anybody else, I don't think it's a good fit. I don't think it's a good spend of money, even for like a game night. It'll take a lot of time to explain your entire character sheet and how that works, and then combat works and how all that works. This is better if you're just a fan of TTRPGs in general. It's going to be easier for you to get into. But that's it. I think that was a look through. And again, we looked through the free versions of Final Fantasy XIV. You can Google Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG. They've got a product store for it. The two big books, like the core rule books, they say are coming soon. I imagine those will be coming out towards the end of the year to make good holiday gifts, or at the beginning of next year, early next year, to kick off 2024. And then we look through like some of the scanned character sheets. The character sheets are the same that are in the starter set. The free books are a little different, but go over the same rules. You're just missing an easier explanation of the rules, and then all the scenarios to run the game. You'll still need to buy it to actually run it. And then dice, and then like maps and already cut out stuff and everything else you could possibly need. But yeah, and then ran a combat of it, which is pretty interesting. I thought instant abilities were going to be crazy, but a lot of those are once per phase. So if it's just a singular in combat, it's just once per encounter. There's multiple phases, you get them multiple times, but there's triggers to them, so it's not every turn, every ability, every round, everybody is using instants. It's, you get a lot of reactions and you can use them whenever, and that's nice. Combat was a hell of a lot quicker than I thought. Combat was a hell of a lot simpler than I thought, and way more deadly than I thought, but primarily towards monsters. Although I imagine if you were pretty careless, you could die pretty quickly. That's it for me. And that's, of course, what I think about the system, all laid out in plain text. Yeah, I like it. I'm a fan. But if you're not a fan of TTRPGs, if you're not a fan of Final Fantasy XIV, I don't think this is a good purchase for you. You can always try. If you watched this and were intrigued by what you saw, then I would recommend putting in another order. They're doing a second print run of the product on the Square Enix official store. That's the only place to get these, because they ran out. So hopefully that tells the game publisher, which I think is Hobby Japan, they're the ones designing it. I hope that tells them there's call for this product. Get this stuff out quick. Get it out the door quick. But I have no idea what the final product's going to look like. When it hits shelves and I get it, I will be sure to take a look at it if I can. If there's PDFs of it, I absolutely will do so. Otherwise, it might just be me reading from the book and kind of making notes like this about like big stuff that the game is doing and trying to do. I might make like little spark notes for it. But I don't know if they're going to sell a PDF of it or not. But that is it for me. I have gone far over what I normally do. I apologize for those like the beautiful fiance that are very used to me just being 2 hours done on Sunday. So I'm going to see if I can get us like a little bit of lunch or so, and it might make up for a little bit. But thank you everybody for spending time with me. I really do appreciate it again. No comments in the video so far, but if you have any questions for the YouTube VOD, which is going to be available immediately after this is done, feel free to leave a comment in there, and I will answer to the best of my ability as quickly as I can. Alrighty, everybody. That was it for me. Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG. I'll probably take another look at this again when the books come out officially, but that won't be for months down the line. So, until next time, thank you for joining me, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, play more games, play different games, and I will see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.